helps at all.
In 2023, Kansas City had a record number of homicides. Violence claimed 182 lives in our city. If one life is taken by violence in our city, everyone should be concerned. And everyone should ask themselves what they can do to stop violent crime. 67 families are beginning 2024 without a loved one because an argument turned violent. That's 37% of people killed in Kansas City last year that could have been saved by someone just walking away. 22 lives were lost in domestic violence incidents. 18 lives were taken out of retaliation. 21 involved drugs, and 15 were robberies that turned deadly. Out of 182 homicides, 19 of our victims were 17 years old or younger. 162 lives were taken by violence in the core of our city, in 3 of our 6 patrol division boundaries. All but 20 of the 182 homicides involved a firearm. Most of our homicides are relational, making it difficult to intervene before they occur, due to the acts arising out of conflict of persons that are known to each other. As a chief of police of the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department, this is what I can promise you in 2024. A highly trained professional police force made up of men and women who are invested in the safety and betterment of our city. A police force that delivers a top-notch service to our city, which includes community engagement and enforcement. A new 11-hour shift for all patrol division officers to address critical staffing and deploy more officers on the street during peak times, to reduce response times and provide more opportunities to proactively address crime issues in our community. An evidence-based focused deterrent strategy alongside the city's Partners for Peace and multidisciplinary task force, which has already brought resources to bear on numerous violent crime cases to help victims and families, as well as proactively providing resources before a crime was committed and hundreds more incidents. A written violent crime plan that, although not all-inclusive of all of our efforts, will outline your police department's strategies for reducing violent crime. I do want to note, our homicide unit detectives have worked hard to bring justice for our victims, currently clearing 73% of our homicides, which is well above the national average, with an additional 22 cases awaiting review for charges, to ensure those who are taking lives by violence in Kansas City are held accountable. I also want to set realistic expectations in regard to violent crime. Your police force is just one part of the solution, and we will do our best to prevent violent crime and ensure those who choose violence are held accountable to the degree that we can. We are facing a critical staffing shortage, 300 officers short, and that matters. We are advocating for a city jail with adequate space and services at City Hall and have had positive and productive conversations. I promise to be a good partner with others in our city who are working to reduce violent crime. Together, we hold the key to stopping violent crime in Kansas City. We have to interrupt the culture of violence in Kansas City, where conflicts end in gun violence. Resolve conflicts without violence. Walk away. Your police department cares. We're going to keep showing up, and we're committed to doing our part in reducing violent crime in Kansas City. And Mayor, if you have anything, if not, we'll take questions.
I'll just say one brief thing that I want to make clear to everyone. This chief, the city council, the mayor's office, all of us are committed to cooperation. When you look at cities that had more positive results than we did this year, a lot of it relates to collaboration. It relates to us working together, as the chief noted. It relates to us making sure that there isn't just one source of solutions, but that we are working across our community in violence interruption and prevention, and importantly, as the chief noted, in enforcement, which continues to be an important part of what we do. We continue to thank particularly those who have been working in our homicide unit, who are dealing with any number of calls, any number of challenges right now. And those women and men of our police department are committed to making sure we find justice for all victims and their families. But more than anything, we're also committed to making sure we can be safer in 2024. We have seen other communities do it. We have done it at times. That's why I appreciate the chief's efforts to making sure that we're talking about violence prevention, not just here, not just in community meetings, but in every forum in Kansas City where we can. So, Chief, I thank you for that, and we're happy to stand for questions.
Omaha and Des Moines are of like population as Kansas City. Both of those cities finished 2023 with sub 25 homicides. Where are we going? Are we following that model? Is what can be done to copy them? Because obviously it's working.
Well, I think oftentimes when you compare Kansas City to other cities or even what seemingly seems like comparable cities, each one of our cities has unique challenges. And so we do pay attention to what other cities are doing, what works. As Kansas City is a major city, and that we have meetings with major city police departments, I meet with my peer chiefs. I listen to what they have that's working in their cities to reduce violent crime. I take all of those, but I have to apply that to here, to our challenges, to Kansas City. So everything that we do and apply, it has to be specific to our unique challenges here in Kansas City.
Are there any specific programs from other cities that you might be applying for this next year or trying to implement?
Well, we are going to do the evidence-based focused deterrence model, but that again is in addition to all strategies that we're doing. We're not just doing one, we're not focusing on one strategy. We are doing everything from focused deterrence, which is a model of which you have to have specific pillars to call it a model, to good old-fashioned police work. Like all of those things combined and just working together with our partners. I think the partnership is what is a key factor in this, because police are just part of the solution. It's going to take all of us to come together in Kansas City, and that's why we talk about a citywide approach to violent crime, because that's what it's going to take to break the generational violence that we have here in our city.
Chief, what do you say to the folks out there that may think that we can arrest our way out of this?
Some people think that you can arrest your way out of it, and you know what? Enforcement is a part of it, because those who choose to do violence in Kansas City have got to be held accountable. But when you look at parts of our city that have experienced decades of violence, you've got to see that some of the children that have grown up in that environment have been exposed to trauma. There's a potential for children that are exposed to trauma to replay that out as they become adults too, or even not learning those conflict resolution skills. So we want to make sure that when we talk about providing resources and whatnot, we do want to provide a way for people to choose to not participate in criminal activity, specifically violent crime. But if you do, there will be enforcement.
Chief Graves, on this 300 officers short, where does that figure come from? I mean, I go to the monthly meetings, I've never heard that.
Well, because that is a little bit confusing. We are slotted to have over 1,400 officers. We are about 1,100 officers. That's what our staffing is right now. We are funded for 1,250 because we don't ask for more money than the officers that we think that we can hire in a year. So that might be worth.
1,400 standard come from? Have you ever had 1,400 officers?
Yes. In fact, in 2019, I believe we were 1,300. We were close to 1,400 officers then.
Okay.
That includes civilians?
No, that does not. We usually, at full strength, I believe we have 619 non-sworn staff.
So when you say 300 officers short, is that patrol officers or civilians?
That is law enforcement officers, and that carries across different bureaus, whether that's in our investigations bureau or our patrol bureau.
Chief, talk about the evidence base. Could you explain exactly what that means?
Sure. I'll make it really simple, because focus deterrence, there's different ways to explain it, but basically when you identify groups or people that are involved in violent crime or criminal activity, you call them in and you advise them, I know that you're involved in criminal activity. You have a choice. You can choose to accept services to assist you in getting out of a life of crime. You can do that on your own and stop being involved in criminal activity, or you will face enforcement with a certainty of consequences. That's focus deterrence.
The other question I had was, you said 11-hour shifts is what you were going to.
Yes.
Is that only a certain amount of officers that will do that, or is that across the board?
That is across the city. All uniformed officers in all 6 of our patrol division stations will go to an 11-hour shift on January the 21st. There's a couple benefits with that. One is we hope that we are redeploying officers, which we haven't done since I've been, which we haven't changed since I've been on the police department. When I first came on, we went from an 8-hour shift to a 10-hour shift. Fast forward 25 years later, this is the 11-hour shift that is redeploying our officers, hopefully more officers during shift time and during peak hours, to where officers will be available for emergency calls or service, or hopefully more available for proactive work during those specific times. It has an extra benefit because it will also allow officers a little bit more time off. You know, being critically staffed, as you can understand, sometimes days off could be potentially denied because we don't have enough people to cover the shift, and we have to have so many officers covered to ensure that we are keeping our city safe.
You talked about focused deterrence. Northeast finished 2023 with 7 homicides in December alone. What can the citizens of Northeast expect in terms of additional coverage, additional resources? Because that's unreal. That's
Yes, it
record-breaking
is.
alone.
And I'm actually glad you asked that. We had our weekly meeting, which we call shoot review here, right here in this room. And we discussed that specifically because as chief of police, I ask those questions. I pay attention. I've asked the patrol bureau commander. I've asked the major at East Patrol, and they had answers for me. I asked, you have this many homicides in the Northeast area. What is going on over there? Is this a pattern? Is this group violence? Is this, you know, what is this? Because that would matter of how we would deploy our resources. These all seem to be separate incidents, but it is definitely a spike in violent crime in the Northeast, and there are added patrols.
Chief, nationally, we've seen decreases in violent crime, including homicide. You know, are there any challenges unique or specific to Kansas City that you can think of that might explain why we're seeing?
Yes, and I've actually kept my eye on that. And some of the largest cities in the United States have actually seen, in some, a double-digit reduction. But again, I've got to look at what other police departments do and see how I can apply that here in Kansas City, which is why we're bringing that focused deterrence model here. But outside of that, I've got to look at those specific challenges here. So what are they? What was your question again? I'm sorry. What are they doing?
Are there challenges unique or specific?
I'll tell you one of the challenges. I will tell you one of the challenges. We have a culture of violence in Kansas City of solving conflict with guns. That is the violent cycle that we need to break. And that's going to take everything from people in their homes to stop some of the conflict that's going on, for people who are involved in conflict to walk away. We've seen people who are involved in road rage, result in gun violence, just drive away. We have just got to figure out how to resolve conflict peacefully, and if that is walking away, then do so.
How do you plan on measuring the success of these initiative programs this year? And we're assuming this will take some time.
Yes, it will take some time. And you know, we didn't get here overnight either with the violent crime that we have here in Kansas City. That's the one thing about the police department, as long as I've been on, we do go back and reevaluate. But we have a specific commander that is actually keeping track of all of the initiatives and all of the efforts that we are putting forth in reducing violent crime. And if it doesn't work, I think we're pretty good at pivoting. I'm not going to wait until December of 24 to say, oh, hey, this isn't working. Like, if there's some kind of initiative that we're doing that we're not seeing results, we'll have to pivot and work towards something else that does.
Is the budget there to support this?
Well, let me get Mr. Wesson really quick. I'm sorry.
I have a question for Claire. Okay. I've been trying to figure this out for decades. At the prosecutor's office right now, it's 22 cases. So you have homicides cleared, homicides solved but not cleared, homicides cleared and homicides solved, homicide from past years that are cleared. And when you add all those up, it gives you a clearance of 73 or
73%, yes.
So
Okay.
what is all of that mumbo jumbo?
Okay, so I will tell you that. I understand. I've just lived it for 26 years. So clearance rate, we go off of UCR, it's the FBI way of counting crime. So the homicide clearance rate means we have charged someone or it has been disposed of in one way or another. Sometimes an exceptionally cleared is, sometimes if we locate or identify who the suspect is, and that suspect may happen to be deceased. So that's an example of an exceptionally cleared. A cleared case is a suspect has been identified and charged. A solved case is a suspect has been identified but not yet charged, or we have charges pending. Like the suspect hasn't been charged yet. The thing about the clearance rate from years prior is, if we just had a homicide, unfortunately, on New Year's Eve, we can't go back and necessarily clear that. So that homicide, we're going to continue to work that homicide until it's cleared, until it's solved and cleared. So then we put that on that homicide sheet also to show that as a clearance rate.
So does that mean that somebody's in custody, or you just know who it is that?
If it's cleared, someone's charged. If someone's charged, we arrest them, and then they go to the criminal justice system that deals in the courts.
Well, why are only 22 of them in the prosecutor's office?
That's 22 that are being reviewed, because there's a lot that goes into a homicide file, and they have a team of prosecutors that look at each one, and sometimes out of those 22 they might send one back and say, hey, we need a little bit more on this. So they want to make sure that they are that we present a case for successful prosecution, and so they review those, and if they need more, they send it back. So that's what those cases are. Yes, sir.
Is the budget there to support these changes that you want to make? The staffing, the additional, is that an 11-hour shift with a 1-hour break for the officer in between? At some point, there's going to be overtime that's accrued, and is the money there to support what you need to do?
We have submitted a budget for the next budget year. That goes into effect on May 1, and I know that the mayor and I have had really great conversations about making sure that our officers are paid, and that they are valued and supported in their compensation. I don't want to speak for you on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually think that speaks for itself. I think there is an understanding that you have to pay real money to make sure that we're addressing some of the things that we need, one of which is officers. Salaries are going to be an important part of our conversation. We will have an important part of our conversation on what support we need for civilians. This chief, I think, has been active in seeing where are there places where perhaps we can have officers back on the streets, have civilians picking up certain areas. I think we'll have more conversation on that. But I think we are all committed to making sure that we have not just budget support, but broader support from the city in connection with addressing our public safety concerns. One thing that I have noted is that, as we look to 2024, this chief, by the way, I remind you, started, I believe, 13 months ago. We are going to be as innovative as possible. There was a question before about, are we looking at programs like Omaha or Des Moines, or frankly, cities you don't think about all the time, St. Louis and Baltimore and others who've had pretty dramatic declines in recent times? And the answer is yes to all of the above. Part of the reason the chief, others in departmental leadership go to other cities, visit with other agencies, including the FBI, is to make sure that you're having those types of innovative and creative ideas here in Kansas City, and all will be a part of it, particular to the Northeast as well. When we talk about collaboration, the reason that it's not just a focused deterrence program alone, but also the city engaged, comes from tragedies we've seen in the past in the Northeast and elsewhere. This year in Kansas City, we had a shooting at a bar where there had been dozens of police calls. In essence, right, the police department had done its job, coming time and time again. There were dozens of code violations, there were dozens of issues, neighbors that had issues for some time. Sometimes this is a requirement for the city to step up. It might be the schools being a part of it, our medical partners. That's what we talk about now in terms of collaborative programs and work. Because there's one word that I think sometimes is missed when we talk about things like focused deterrence or certain programs, and that is focus. We would love for there to be a magic wand, singular solution that says you can fix it all. Unfortunately, we have to visit with people, neighborhoods, families, blocks that sometimes have disputes. Certainly in the domestic violence arena, dealing with and working with survivors of domestic violence, this takes a lot of time. That's why she's talking about the number of officers. That's why we're talking about investment and programmatic efforts at the city.
But in those other cities, Mayor,
Yep.
there's always, it seems like in my research and talking to people, is there is not just so much the police department and how they handle it, but their city council, their aldermen, and those people being more aware of what the needs are in the community rather than try a blanket approach and let's see if this works. So is the city council going to be doing anything different? Because we've had these press conferences for the past 5-10 years. We always wind up right back here with the same issue. What can people believe is going to be different this time?
You know, I'll note a few things, and then I'll certainly break for the chief. I mean, the first thing is your point's very well taken. Not only have we had these press conferences the last 5 or 10 years, but pretty much my entire life as a Kansas Citian, we've had unconscionably high levels of violent crime. What that does not mean, however, is that we stop trying to find ways to improve. And that's what, in essence, this is about right now. It is us saying that we are looking to find incredible collaborative ways to address our violent crime issues. I think what you're hearing from the chief, and I certainly know that the Board of Police Commissioners, what we've discussed is how do we work across any number of agencies to make sure if there's an issue in Northeast, if there's an issue in Washington, Wheatley, an issue in South Kansas City, that we actually are saying this may require us to talk to area school districts, officers on patrol, our community engagement division more broadly, social workers and beyond. So I think what you are seeing that is different is folks not just saying we have the right solution. And I'll go a little more honest, and this is me talking, not the chief, but just me. I've now been mayor for 4.5 years. It has not always been the case that I think we are as collaborative as we've needed to be. And all of us who have been part of that process take some blame for that. I think what you are seeing from this chief now, and with respect from the city council, is folks saying that we are actually trying to find a way that says you may have your idea, you may have your lane, but they all need to work together to get to the same place. Somebody's sitting on a bunch of information about code violations up and down a certain thoroughfare in our city, but not actually talking to a patrol division that's actually often policing there is problematic for us. Some of us having some information as to, let's say, prosecutions or something of that sort, but it not being something that's inputted into what we're doing on budgeting, not just with police, but broadly at city council in terms of code enforcement, is something that's problematic for us. I think what we are seeing is a change in how we actually do that budgeting. It's a change in how we do that communication. And I will commend this chief in being over across the street at city council and city hall more than I've seen from any chief during my now 8.5 years in public office. And I expect that to continue because I think that is the way, when you look at other cities, how things can change long term.
A couple more, guys.
Chief, have you seen where the crime is happening in these neighborhoods change this year? Because with that 360 program, I think you were in that small Santa Fe neighborhood, you saw it decrease. So which neighborhoods is the crime happening? And I guess, are these 11-hour shifts going to allocate more officers to the service?
So in those 3 patrol division stations, if you break them down by neighborhoods, you'll see like where some of these homicides have occurred. And like I said before, some of those were have been occurring in the same neighborhoods for decades. Earlier this year, or excuse me, last year, we did converge on a 7x7 block area with Melissa Johnson and Partners for Peace and city services to really get in there and help on so many different levels that I've never seen in my 26 years as being a member of this police department. But your question as far as what was the second part?
How has where the crime happening changed in certain neighborhoods?
Well, that we definitely saw a reduction in crime in that area that we had a lot of resources that converged on that 7x7 block area. Also in the Santa Fe neighborhood that we talked about just not 3 to 4 months ago, they saw a significant reduction in violent crime. A part of that is everyone in that area is getting involved. Not only are they getting involved, but the police department is there not only for presence, but also for engagement and enforcement. In addition to a lot of the city services to let those pockets of our neighborhoods know like that you're not forgotten, that we're here and we want to make even your environment less conducive for crime.
Last one, guys.
The city has committed millions of dollars for crime prevention activities over the next 5 years. But one crime prevention activity is to identify, arrest, prosecute, and incarcerate persistent violent offenders who have already committed homicides or tried to. With your current staffing, will you be able to devote more police resources to try to clear this tremendous homicide rate we have? Because you know, we're at 182.
Yes.
Omaha was at 28 this year.
And it took them 15 years to do that. I don't want to, yes. And that is not a knock on them. They've done wonderful work. They've had a lot of city investment. And the people that have visited Omaha have talked about how even beautiful the streets are. And I think that's due in part to kind of what we're starting here as well, is making sure that the areas in our city that have seen violent crime over and over again, that the areas are less conducive to crime, even by their environment. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
But with your current staffing, will you be able to devote more resources to try to clear more of our homicide cases?
Yes, so that's also part of that focused assurance, also to prevent. But there's also an enforcement side to that. But we have units outside of our violent crimes division that work on prolific violent offenders, that who we know who have been identified, who are involved in violent crime in Kansas City, and we have those special investigation squads that focus on those type of individuals that we know are violent.
So are you going to be able to devote even more resources?
Yes, and we have an academy class that's starting in March. We have an academy class that's graduating in February. We have an academy class that's getting off break-in on January 21st. And we hope to have one of our largest classes that we've had in a long time start the police academy in March. And if anyone is asking themselves what they can do to help us fight violent crime, we are hiring. We need Kansas Cityans to come forward to take the oath and come and serve their city in a whole nother way.
Let me just say, I'll say one very quick thing about Omaha, because it's come up a lot, and the chief, I think, hit this point, but it's important to reiterate. Every city is different. We respect the models and the changes that they have, but the Kansas City metropolitan area is larger than some of the areas that you have mentioned, which means, of course, that we have a number of people who come through our city doing any number of things. What that means for us is that we're not just policing based on a model of cities of 508,000 people. We're policing with challenges that come from drug trafficking through our community, and some situations, human trafficking and other issues. So this department doesn't actually just face the same set of issues that you may find in a city just like it, in Aurora, Colorado, that has about 350,000. What you find is actually a city that largely is dealing with the issues of a 2.3, 2.4 million person metropolitan area with a whole lot of geographic territory, a whole lot of incidents, big events, small events, what have you, and them trying to make sure that policing isn't just what's going on in your neighborhoods each day, but it's keeping us safe during big events, it's addressing nuisances, violent crimes, and beyond. And so what I think that this department is doing well, and what this chief is focusing on, is how do we, understanding all of those challenges we face, how do we make sure that we're doing policy relating to neighborhood nuisances, to encampments, to anything under the sun, looking at models from cities all around the country. And so that's why it isn't just we can copy paste Omaha, it's going to work here, we'll all be done. And indeed, that's why the chief noted it took about 15 years for it to work for them. What we're trying to do is truly find, to Mr. Weston's question, a Kansas City solution to generational Kansas City concerns. Those can be informed by many other American cities, but it's going to be KCPD working with Kansas Cityans leadership, churches, community leaders, and others to make sure that we actually come to that Kansas City solution to reduce crime here long after it's taken far too long. With that,
we did copy the $25,000 reward from Omaha.
That's absolutely right.
I remember when it was implemented in 2019. There was a homicide at 7-Eleven that
I think we can take this off camera, all right? We'll talk to you more about that. Thank you all so much.
They got the guy before he had time to change clothes.